Hey guys, what's up? It's Jay, and this is Jay versus Horror. That's right, we're back. And today, guys, it's probably been a few weeks since I talked to you guys, and I've seen about 13 or 14 movies. So we're going to talk about them. First off, first and foremost, of course, we're going to talk about Evil Dead Rise. I really like this movie a lot. It's kind of like a fun popcorn horror film, right? Now, I'm not saying it's not without its problems, and I did see a few criticisms from fans of the Evil Dead franchise. My biggest criticism was at the end of the film, it kind of feels like it goes into Resident Evil territory more than Evil Dead territory, right? But yeah, it's a fun movie, and I was a little bit surprised at this take on Evil Dead because it's a lot similar to what we've already seen. We thought it was going to be much different, right? So, in my opinion, just from what I know about horror, uh, you know, Sam Raimi makes Evil Dead in like 1981, and that's like a culmination of what if zombies were actually scary, and what if they acted like Reagan from The Exorcist, right? And then after he makes that movie and it's a big hit, the guys in Italy are always watching everything and whatever's hitting around the world. They see this and they're like, hey, we could totally make that, right? So Lamberto Bava and Dario Argento make Demons, and to me, it's just a amped up version of Evil Dead, and and then there's Demons 2 and Demons 3, but Demons 2 is the only one that really sticks with the original concept, and it's done in a high-rise apartment building. So a lot of people thought when Evil Dead Rise came out, it was just going to be now a rip-off of Demons 2. Um, I don't think it really matters. All these films are fun. It doesn't matter what franchise they're in. They're all continuations of everything, and they're all derivative of classic ideas all put together, right? Uh, but yeah, Evil Dead Rise did not really come off to me like Demons 2, and I was a little bit surprised because even though they're in this huge, apartment high rise building, there weren't that many characters. Like there's what maybe there's four or five main characters, and then there's like two or three, maybe four characters thrown in just to get knocked off, right? So yeah, um, I liked the movie. I thought it had a couple problems. I would give it like 7 out of 10. I thought it deserved at least 7 out of 10, maybe 7.5 out of 10 at the most. Uh, I didn't think it was as good as the remake that they did or reboot. I don't know what you want to call it previously, but it did seem to stay in that vein. It very much felt like that film, and it was good. I liked how it, they. I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen it, but there's a wraparound story here that goes from the front to the back. I really liked how they did it. But yeah, Evil Dead Rise. So the next movie we're going to talk about is called Ein's Main. And when I first saw this movie, I thought it was called Eine's Men, and I didn't understand. I saw the trailer for it, and luckily for me, my girlfriend is British, and she explained to me this is like Cornish. It's from Cornwall, these islands, and it's actually pronounced Ein's Main, and that means Island of Stone or Stone Island, right? So that makes a whole lot more sense when you see this movie because it's basically a woman who is trapped on an island. And I think there's some idea here. This is a really weird movie, okay? It's very surreal, it's very visual. And we've seen these kind of movies before where you think somebody's going crazy and you don't know if you can trust the narrator, you don't know if you can trust anything that you're seeing in the film, right? But in this movie, there is the idea that there's something evil about being repetitive, and I don't know what that idea is fully, but I know we heard that you know which one was it where they said that hell was repetition? Oh yeah, Storm of the Century, right? Where he tells the guy that his mother is in hell, and that she's screaming that hell is repetition. It's the worst thing you could ever think of over and over. And there's something about that idea in this movie, and it's just really, I don't know if you're gonna love it as a horror film, but visually it's a very interesting movie and it's fun to watch. It's one of these movies that has come out this year. There's a lot of them. I have come up with the term no burn instead of slow burn because that's what we're getting. We're getting these movies that they're adding the least amount of horror possible so they can then call it a horror film. That's kind of what this felt like. That's what a few films felt like to me this year. But this one is very heavily stylized, and it was a fun watch, even if you don't enjoy it fully as a horror film. It's kind of an experimental film. We're getting those with Skinamarink and The Outwaters and some of the other films we saw earlier on this year. So yeah, I'm gonna give Ein's Main. For me, it's like a 6.5 film, and about probably a point and a half of that is just purely visual filmmaking, the creative, intelligent style that it's done in. Uh, the performances are weird because it's done in a almost it's I won't say it's a mocking style, but it wants you to think of it like a late '60s, early '70s horror film. And so some of the acting and stuff like that, it seems like it's off, but it's not really. It's in that style, so it's hard to give it a grade. But yeah, for me, the whole thing, 6.5 out of 10. And I'd say check it out if you really like, good visual horror films. You might like this one a lot more than I did. Moving on to number 3 that I got to talk about, The Pope's Exorcist. I like this one a lot, and guys, yeah, I'm kind of like zombie films, exorcist films. Come on, we've seen so many of them. We've seen thousands of them at this point, and it's really got to do something for me to even care about it at this point. The Pope's Exorcist is pretty good, and probably the best thing in it. It tries to have a really good story, but it's got good effects for an exorcism movie. It also has Russell Crowe, and Russell Crowe is doing some good work late in his career. I mean, I felt like he got really pumped up with some early roles in the '90s, like L.A. Confidential and Gladiator and stuff like that, and then he kind of mellowed. Like some of the roles he took in the 2000s and stuff, you're like, okay, whatever. But now, like some of the stuff he's done lately, like Unhinged, and I even liked his character as Dr. Henry Hyde in, or Dr. Jekyll in, what was it, Tom Cruise's The Mummy movie. That movie's not that great, okay, but I thought Russell Crowe was really good in it, and I really wanted to see his movie after that, more than I wanted to watch that one. The Dr. Jekyll movie that Universal was supposed to make in their dark universe, monster universe, but they never did, because the Mummy didn't work out, right? But anyway, yeah, I like The Pope's Exorcist. I think, it's a little bit better than your average exorcism horror movie, and it's got Russell Crowe in it, good performance. Let's say I'm gonna give The Pope's Exorcist, I'm gonna give it 6.5. I think it deserves that just on production value alone. Like I said, Russell Crowe gives in a good performance here. But guys, in the end, it is an exorcism movie, and we're gonna get like maybe 10 or 15 more of these this year, including I think David Gordon Green's Exorcism, or The Exorcist remake, is coming out. It's not even a remake, it's a continuation of The Exorcist. Thank God, right? I'm glad nobody is actually trying to remake The Exorcist. That's a terrible idea. So yeah, that's coming down the line. I don't even know if I would have put this movie out this year knowing that. I would have probably waited a year or put it out a year earlier or something before. I don't know, because I don't know what those movies are going to be. Maybe they'll be terrible. But yeah, 6.5 out of 10 for The Pope's Exorcist. Let's go with the next one, Kids vs. Aliens. This is a Shudder movie. You got to check these movies out, because some of them, you've never heard of them. You didn't see them on festivals or anything like that. But then all of a sudden they pop up, and you got to give them a chance, because every now and then one of them is really great. And there's been a few this year. If you guys check out the Jay vs. Horror YouTube channel, you watch the videos there. Me and Lisa have watched a lot of movies this year already. Probably 50, 60 horror films already. And so it's no big deal for us to come on here and talk about 13 at once, right? But anyway, yeah, Kids vs. Aliens. It wants to be like an 80s fun movie that, it has this really great kids spirit to it, and you think kids are going to love it. Kids probably will love it, but I think it's a little weird. There's just something about this film that's a little weird. It doesn't seem to connect that great. And I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of times you'll hear us talk about one of these movies and we'll say, but the kids are great actors. In this movie, the kids were not great actors, in my opinion. They were just spitting out lines. And it's a fun movie. I'm not going to say it's terrible. It's a decent watch if you don't have anything else to do on a Sunday afternoon. Let's give it 5.5. And just don't expect too much. One thing I will say about this is the fun part of Kids vs. Aliens is that the aliens are vicious. These aren't aliens like E.T. or anything like that. They didn't come to visit and get mistaken or anything. They are out there taking people out, and they are vicious. So yeah, that was fun. Moving on. The next one we're going to talk about is Hypochondriac. This is actually from 2022, and it took me a long time to find it. It was on my list for last year, and like I said, we watched probably 250 horror films last year, and just there was a few, we're going to talk about them right here, that we didn't get to. We couldn't get to them, and Hypochondriac was one of them. It's a decent film. It's about a guy who's basically in a weird-ass kind of like triangle. I won't say love triangle. It's a weird triangle between him, his mother, and his boyfriend. She's pulling him one way, his boyfriend's pulling him another way. They're both telling him that the other one is messing with him, and he's having a breakdown of his own. So the film is kind of like that. I've seen a lot of these recently too. Shapeless from last year was another 2022, like where they have a psychological break. There's a lot of them. But this one, it's decent. I won't say it's great. For me, it's a 5.5. There's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't have anything really super original to say, other than the characters are kind of original. We don't see a lot of these characters in these situations. So I thought it was kind of the old time culture clashes with the new age type of a relationship. I thought that was interesting. But Hypochondriac overall, not that great of a film. 5.5 from us. Lisa doesn't want to be on camera. I'm always trying to get her to come on and do the reviews with me. She has great input when we're watching them, and she comes up with all these great ideas. And then I don't want to steal her ideas though, so I don't ever. I'll mention it if I do. I try to give her credit for it because I can't get her to come on. We're gonna start a podcast, and we're gonna make Lisa get on the podcast. We're probably gonna have to do X-Files because that's her favorite thing. X-Files. We'll just do one episode at a time and talk about them just to make her get on. Okay, our next movie is called Medusa. Medusa is also from 2022, and this is another one I looked for a long time. And it's kind of a weird film. I'm not even sure how much of a horror film this one is, but it was interesting. Yeah, it's a foreign film, and it starts off with these girls who are basically super religious. They're in kind of a super religious, huge mega church. And at night, they go out and beat the hell out of prostitutes and girls who they think are, filthy or whatever. They have this morality thing. But slowly through the film, there's several character arcs. And these people, of course, some of these ladies start to realize they were maybe wrong for what they were doing. And that's really about it. Some of the attacks are kind of vicious, and there's some things they see, I guess, while they're having these epiphanies, awakenings, whatever you want to call them, that are a little disturbing or off-putting. But overall, there's not a whole lot of horror in Medusa. It's just kind of a good film on social commentary, because I like this in The Boys too. There's one of these points where everything's going great, but then whenever the church or the cult or whatever it is turns on somebody, all of a sudden that person is toxic. That person has a toxic personality, right? They shouldn't be. They have a toxic personality. They should not be allowed around here anymore, right? Yeah, okay. So that's the way that goes. Very Scientologist in a foreign land is what I got from it, but it's a good movie. Let's give Medusa, I'm going to give it 6 out of 10, which is weird because, like I said, it didn't have a whole lot of horror in it, and that's what I was expecting with this. I'm going to give it 6 out of 10, though. I thought it was a decent movie. It's worth your time. I'll say that. And moving on, our next one is Family Dinner. Actually, an Easter horror film. I wish we'd have got to this one earlier, because this is an Easter horror film. It's another foreign horror film. If Lisa would get on, she could probably tell you right off the bat, because she is... I love foreign horror, but I can't always identify the language. Like right now, I could say French, or I could say English, or you know what I mean. I can get within it, but Lisa knows. She knows dialects and stuff, so she could tell you exactly where this stuff comes from. But anyway, or you could just look it up. You could Google it. But Family Dinner, yeah, it's actually an Easter horror film. Imagine that. We got one, and it's completely about this girl who goes to stay with her kind of weird ass family in the woods, and they're getting ready for Easter, and they are super religious, and their ideas on eating are very strange. They go from the odd of one end of like starving yourself to strange dinners. We'll just say that. So yeah, I like this movie. It doesn't have a lot of pop to it. It doesn't have the greatest payoff, and the end is a little ambiguous. You kind of get what's happening here, and it does remind you a little bit of some stuff we saw last year, like Piggy, I thought, a little bit. But yeah, all in all, it's not a bad movie. Let's give it 6 out of 10. Worth a watch. You might like it more than I did. Hey, we need more Easter horror films. This was a decent one. So moving on. Horror in the High Desert 2. Now, I remember Horror in the High Desert. I think that was last year. Maybe 2 years ago, depending on when you saw it. And I thought that one was pretty decent, man. It was kind of like a creepy little found footage movie. And I'm always down for a creepy little found footage movie. This one did not have the same payoff for me. It was not as good, and this is why you have to be careful with these really small films when they get sequels, because sometimes, look, nobody got paid on the first one, and this is really what the second one is about, just cutting checks for everybody. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but to me, and I have seen a couple people that gave this one better reviews than I did, but for me, this one's a 5 out of 10, guys. And for just how I review stuff, everything starts off at 5 out of 10, and you go up or down from there. And so usually I'm not really going to probably talk about anything that went like below 3 or something like that. But to me, there is nothing like that really that bad. But there's also nothing that's really like a 10 either. I mean, everything has to have, you have to be aware that nothing's perfect. And that's what makes some things great, is that nothing's perfect, right? So moving on, I'm just going to say 5 out of 10 for, if you want to watch it, guys. If you like the first one, you might want to go ahead and give it a chance. Similar to like the, what was it, Hell House LLC movies, they kind of tail off. This one, I can see what this is happening here for this franchise. Maybe they'll pick it back up in the next one, but anyway, the number 9 movie that we were going to talk about is Snow falls, guys. This one is a weird one. It was interesting. The snow is evil, and you're trapped inside. This one wasn't bad, but it's a little cheesy, and they kept showing shots of the snow, and I kept thinking, it's not really that tall. I grew up in Missouri, and the winters were pretty cold, and I can remember snow much deeper than that, and we walked around and had a good time. But anyway, yeah, and the snow. The idea here is that maybe the snow is evil, but the idea also becomes that we don't really know what the hell is going on. Maybe these people are paranoid. Maybe they're having some kind of group hysteria because of being trapped or whatever is going on here. Uh, but the biggest problem I have with this movie is that the payoff in the end. To me, like if you're gonna put all these people together and you're gonna put them in this extreme, I want a big payoff for this, right? Because I have seen stuff in the past. There's a movie from like 2009 called Hunger, where this guy just throws like four people in a pit together, and it's like there's a big trough of water down there, so they're not gonna die from thirst, but there's no food, and eventually they're gonna eat each other, right? And that's what happens in that movie. It's a great movie that nobody ever talks about. But this one, they don't go there. They won't go that far, right? They'll go to like people going crazy and turning on each other, but they won't go. We're gonna die if we don't eat each other. They won't go that far. Donner Party, yeah, Dahmer. I want to say Dahmer Party. Isn't that funny? Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Snowfalls. I'm gonna give it. Okay, guys. I'm gonna give it 5.5 out of 10. I'm gonna give it a 5.5 because I'm being hard on it because I wanted more out of it than what I got out of it, and I think it was probably a little bit better than what I walked away from with it. And number 10, the number 10 movie I'm going to talk about real quick, Crawl Space. This is kind of a weird one. It's kind of a really small movie with Henry Thomas in it. And it's about, I don't know if this is a horror movie. I don't know if this is Die Hard. I don't know what the hell this is. It's kind of like, it's a really small version of Die Hard maybe. I don't know. This guy is a plumber. He sees a murder. He is now stuck in the crawl space, and the murderers will not let him out of the crawl space, and they're trying to kill him. And so it just goes on like that, and it tries to do some stuff where he like become I'm a badass, or he's gonna become a badass, and he builds like a Freddy claw, and he goes after these guys, right? And it's not terrible, made on a shoestring budget, and I'm gonna tell you what, if you really want to get some full impact out of this movie, go show it to your dad. Watch this movie with your dad. Dad, this is a dad movie. Because the guy's just an ordinary, everyday plumber, and he gets put in a really bad situation, and he decides, you know what, I want to see my wife and my kids again, and I'm not taking this shit anymore. So basically, that's what the film is about. Okay, now, what is... Oh, yeah, Mallium. So this is the last new film I'm going to talk about, Mallium. Now, Mallium is a remake of The Last Shift. Now, I had problems with The Last Shift. A lot of people praise that movie. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. From that year, 2015, I want to say. And I wasn't overly impressed with it. And I've seen a lot of movies like The Last Shift. Even recently, I mean, like, just even a few years before The Last Shift, there was a movie called Site 9. It was basically the same setup, a mental institution, though, instead of a police station was shutting down and the person was hallucinating and going. Anyway, I wasn't overly impressed with The Last Shift, and apparently the director was not either because he wanted a second shot to make the movie, and that's what Mallium is. It's a remake of The Last Shift, and is it better? Yeah, it's better. It's a better movie. It gets more into the story of what's happening and explains more about what's happening, why it's happening. I don't know if the effects are like a ton better, but some of the story, I don't know. There's parts of it where you're like, okay, they could have left that out. They could have skipped that and got to the meat. But yeah, overall, I would say it's better than The Last Shift, and I'll give Mallium like 7 out of 10. I thought it was a decent movie. I don't know if it's the best movie of the year. I saw a couple people say that. I'm like, no, I can't go that far. And it's too subjective right now because what I'm seeing with horror right now is that there's lots of different styles, and that's what seems to be happening this year. And Mallium is a remake of a film from 2015. The director got a second chance. He did a better job. Check it out if you want to. And now I'm going to talk about the 12th movie I'm going to talk about is our free movie of the week. Go check it out. You can catch this movie on Freeview, guys. We always talk about Tubi, but don't sleep on Pluto. Pluto TV, Freeview. These sites have massive amounts of horror films, and a lot of them have different ones. And on Freeview, you can check out a film from 2019 called Life Changer. It's about a body transforming, morphing, doppelganger, skin walking soul stealer. Yes, this thing kills people. It kills them and it takes over who they are. And we see this thing. What happens is, I guess it's been like this his whole life. But for years, it would only have to take one person every few years. The time span over a period of years got shorter, and now he's at the end. And it's like he has to take a body every few days at the most, right? Or at the that's the furthest he can go is every few days. And sometimes it's a matter of hours till he has to switch. And so he's going through bodies, and he's almost like a serial killer, and he's narrating all this like a serial killer. Something, some of the House Jack built, some of those kind of movies that we've seen where the serial killer tells us what's going on. That's what's happening here. And so we have one main character that's narrating everything, but it's going through 5 different people in this film, and each one of these people give a freaking good performance. It's a great movie. Very underrated. People might say it's not a horror film. I'll say it's a horror sci-fi film, and it has serial killer aspects. It has paranormal aspects to some degree, or creature aspects, whatever you want to call it. And what's fun about it is this thing doesn't know what it is. It just knows that it wants to live, and it's willing to do whatever it has to do to live, just like we would, right? Or would we? I don't know. Life Changer. Check it out from 2019, free on Freeview. The horror series of the week that I'm going to talk about. Now, I don't know where you can find this one. It's probably on a streaming site somewhere. I found it at my local library. It's I went up there and I got a couple of Stephen King books and some Dean Koontz books to hold us over for a couple weeks. And while we're watching movies, when we're not watching movies, whatever. But yeah, I got a TV series, The Outsider, from 2019. I watched this in 2019. I started it, and I remember like by the time I got to episode 4, I just forgot about it or something like that. It's actually not that bad, guys. Check it out. The first few episodes are amazing. It's like one of the best crime mysteries out there because you really have no idea what's going on. There's no way to figure out what's going on, and there's some great performances in those first 2 episodes. After that, it kind of goes into like, regular Stephen King territory. It becomes like a story about a child-eating monster that is hiding in a cave, and a bunch of adults, a band of adults have to go find it. Yes, you've seen it before, as Joe Bob would say. But have you seen it with Ben Mendelsohn and Patty Considine? And yeah, it's a good. I would say there's some episodes towards the end, like they could have shortened it up a little bit. Maybe instead of doing like 9 episodes, maybe they could have went to like 7 or something, and would have made the series more succinct. They had an idea for a second season of this, but then everybody watched it and they're like, you know what? It just really works better as a mini series than it would as a series on and on and on. And there's some great characters in the story. It's fun, but just go into it thinking that it's really great at the beginning, and you're gonna get into like common Stephen King territory before long. Not that that's bad. We like it, right? And guys, that's it. We talked about a lot of stuff today, and I'm gonna try to do one of these videos every week and just talk about all the horror stuff that's on my mind from that week. Right now, I'm on a British horror movie kick. I'm making Lisa watch a bunch of British horror films. We just watched Kill List, Inbred, bunch of stuff the last couple days, and we got a lot more stuff on the list tonight. Definitely going to get to Sightseers and Censor, at least. And also going to see what else is new, what else is out there, what's next. We'll talk to you guys the next time we got something we're talking about. Bye.